We just got a new horror game trailer. Let's talk about it. Hey, great to have you here. So earlier today on stream, I wound up covering the SummerCamp trailer that just got announced, a new asymmetrical horror game that's similar to Friday the 13th. I figured I'd take some of the clips from that live stream and just share with you guys as far as my thoughts on the new SummerCamp game, so definitely take a look here. So for anyone not aware, Friday the 13th was a game that came out years ago. My first real experience with an asymmetrical horror game. It was an awesome experience. You're obviously playing as either camp counselors or playing as Jason. I think it was 8 people total, so then there were 7 counselors and Jason, and then you could bring Tommy back, so you could even have 8 people technically in the game. One of the counselors would come back alive as Tommy, but either way, that game wound up getting in some like legal complications with the rights of Friday the 13th, with kind of like, that's kind of the case with a lot of these horror franchises where the legal rights get so jumbled, and that game kind of died off because you couldn't create new content for it because of legal complications. They wound up then taking the servers down, and then eventually the whole game was shut down. So you can't even play the game anymore outside of some alternate routes to doing so. So this other game that's supposed to be coming out called SummerCamp that felt very similar to Friday the 13th. I think there was inspiration from it from the developers. This is a much smaller team though. They actually have a Kickstarter, and I saw they put this trailer out kind of teasing things. This was supposed to come out, I think, on Friday the 13th, but then they wound up delaying it because they didn't want to take the limelight, I think, of Friday the 13th stuff. So we'll just kind of take a look at it quickly and see what we get with it. I may just go screenshot from screenshot with this. I don't think there'd be any copyright issues, but it probably wouldn't hurt to get used to kind of showing things that way. So hopefully this is popping up all right. So starting things off here, we have, what is this, like a cabin? So very much the vibe of Friday the 13th. I'm a little unsure. I feel like from what we've seen thus far of SummerCamp, it seemed like very similar assets. So I'm not sure exactly what's being utilized. Maybe like an Unreal Engine or whatever, but felt very similar visually to Friday the 13th. So yeah, as I said here, we have this cabin here, and let's see where we go from here. Okay, so we're going around the side of the cabin, and then suddenly we're underwater, so it looks like we're jumping into that water maybe here. We see a counselor, potentially his leg here. And popping out as well. And yeah, that light post looks very much something like you'd see in Friday the 13th. This is just a teaser, so this is definitely not very long. Is that pretty much it? They just showed the forest then at the end? Yep, SummerCamp, as I said, on Kickstarter. So definitely not a lot they showed off with this. Obviously, it's named teaser for a reason, but kind of underwhelmed with how much they gave us for kind of the hype. Because I had heard things about they had this big announcement coming on Friday the 13th, which, as I said, got delayed a few days. But as far as what they showed us here, we just see a cabin, which is obviously we expect that to have that asset in a SummerCamp game. And then outside of that, we really just get kind of this tease of this person's leg dead, maybe in this water. And then come out to, yeah, this looks very Friday the 13th aesthetic. Obviously, you're at SummerCamp, so it's going to be similar anyway, but it definitely has similar appearances to things. I think the person, instead of being Jason, is called like the Slaughter, if I remember correctly. So they're kind of tweaking things slightly, but it feels very similar to that Friday the 13th game. As I said, that was the first asymmetrical horror game that I played. I wound up then going to Dead by Daylight and other things further beyond that. But Friday the 13th, if you missed it, it was such an amazing kind of experience. It had a lot of bugs at launch with like lobbies and stuff. But once it got settled, it was such a fun time just jumping in and playing this kind of new experience of being a counselor or being Jason. You kind of randomly got assigned your role. So it was, everybody always wanted to be Jason, it felt like, but you had to play counselor if it wound up picking you for that. So we'll have to see what this game winds up becoming. I'm optimistic that it could wind up being something similar to what we had with Friday the 13th, but without having the IP attached to it, will it be as exciting if you're not playing as Jason, for example? I'm not entirely sure, and if you're not going to some of these iconic locations, once again, maybe not as enjoyable of an experience, but if some of the core gameplay mechanics are still there, maybe it could be worthwhile jumping into. So curious to see what comes of this. Obviously, this teaser trailer didn't really give us a lot. It was kind of underwhelming, if I'm being honest, as far as what they showed us. But I didn't fully expect a whole lot. Otherwise, we'd have just the game being launched. So I'm curious, though, too. May just be because this is a trailer. This is definitely from a first-person perspective. The Friday the 13th game, and what I would assume this game would be, is third-person, though. So Curious if they're just showing first person to get more like immersed into the story just for the sake of this trailer. We'll have to see there ultimately though, but either way, I'm looking forward to the potential with this. We'll have to see what they wind up putting out when the launch comes, but if it can be anything like the original Friday the 13th game, I'd be all for it. So just figured I'd share that with you guys. So that's all we were shown with their surprise summer camp teaser. What are your thoughts? Is this a game you're interested in picking up down the line? Not really sure, as I said. Is this going to be very much identical to Friday the 13th, or is it going to be its own spin-off with its own game mechanics? We'll have to ultimately see there. I'll share more information on the channel as we learn more, but just share your thoughts down in the comments below if this is a game that you may be interested in. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to talk to you again soon.